What if I told you that some of the most profound lessons of the Bible are whispered by people you've probably walked past without a second thought? Picture it. Famous names like Abraham, Moses, and Paul stand tall in stone and stained glass. Their stories echo in sermons and songs. But between those grand scenes, tucked into marketplaces and near quiet wells, other lives bend history with small, sacred actions. Imagine I unroll an old scroll by candlelight. The flame trembles, and the ink seems to move. You lean in. There, between the lines, are the footsteps of a servant drawing water at dusk. The hush of a little girl's home where hope is all that remains. The rush of a servant girl bursting through a locked door with news that makes everyone laugh and cry at once. These are not footnotes. They are hinge points of God's story. Tonight, we're heading to 3 of those hidden places. We will meet a nameless servant whose quiet obedience helped secure a promise that shaped a nation. We'll stand at a bedside where a child's whisper of life becomes a miracle, and in that tender moment see the depth of God's care. We'll press our ears against a wooden door and listen as joy and disbelief collide when a young servant's faith proves truer than the doubts of grown men. Each of these voices is small on the page, but enormous in effect. This isn't a lesson about fame. It's an invitation to listen differently. As we read, look for the way God works through what the world calls ordinary. A faithful act done without applause, a compassionate touch no one notices, a simple belief that refuses to be silenced. These stories ask a different question than the ones we usually ask. They wonder not who's leading the parade, but who's carrying the supplies, who opened the door, who chose faith when fear pressed in. You will hear each scene told plainly, with dust on the sandals, the scent of cooking fires, and the rhythm of daily life. I'll point to the scripture behind each moment, but I won't drown you in verse after verse. Instead, we'll let the scenes breathe, listening for the lessons tucked inside. How obedience in the shadows can advance God's promise. How personal compassion reveals the heart of heaven, and how the smallest faith can open the largest doors. If you love finding these quiet treasures hidden in plain sight, consider pressing like now, as a sign you're joining the search. Not as a demand, but as a friendly nod that you're with me. Stick around. The next story will ask you to look at a familiar chapter with fresh eyes. Come closer. The scroll is still warm. Genesis 24 verses 12 to 14. 26 to 27 sets the stage at a quiet well in the desert. Imagine a long caravan under a bruised twilight sky. Camels sway gently in the cool air, and dust settles into the folds of cloaks. The day has been long for this group. Somewhere in that caravan stands a man given a mission so weighty it could bend the future, to find a wife for young Isaac and bring her home to continue a promise spoken by God years before. He is Abraham's servant, the kind of person whose name the story never remembers. Yet in this moment, his choices hold everything. His hands steady the journey, and his eyes read people and places the way a captain reads stars. He's a quiet man, not bold in speech, but prayerful and watchful in heart. Before he acts, he prays. Right there at the well, he bows his head and prays quietly. "O Lord, God of my master Abraham, show kindness to me." He asks for a clear sign at this well. He tells himself a test. When a young woman comes to draw water, if she offers him a drink and volunteers to water his camels, then he will know she's the one chosen by God. So he waits. Waiting becomes his witness. He stands near the stone well, its aged edges slick with moss. He notices the rhythm of village life around him. Sandals clinking against stone, laughter floating from an open doorway, the creak of an old wooden gate. The world is winding down for evening, but for him, it's as alive as a heartbeat. Then she appears. Rebecca steps into view, a water jar balanced on her shoulder. The sun is low, casting long shadows. Her skirts are dusty from the road, her face calm and strong. She is beautiful, yes, but more than that, she is kind. In one fluid motion, she dips the jar into the well and draws up water. The servant's heart beats a little faster. She sees him and, without a word, offers him a drink. He feels the cool water against his parched lips. But she does more. Before he asks, she says, "I will draw water for your camels too, until they have finished drinking." She does not hesitate. In that moment, the servant recognizes more than just a sign. He sees hospitality, integrity, and a willing heart. He bows his head in quiet gratitude. He blesses God on this silent earth and thanks the Lord for guiding him to this woman. Later, with a heart full of amazement, the servant shares the story at the tent. He speaks plainly and carefully, telling how the test was met and how she poured for camels too. He does not claim the spotlight. He merely reports what happened. He praises God for leading him to Abraham's family. Notice one thing: the servant remains unnamed. He does not step forward into the light. There's a quiet power in this kind of faith. It's a faith that prays for direction and then follows the answer without any need for recognition. It's steady, obedient courage, the work of arranging details, showing up where duty calls, and trusting God with the results. The servant's choices move the promise of God forward. A marriage is formed, a line is preserved, God's covenant is kept through small, obedient steps. No drum roll, no fanfare, only the faithful unfolding of what must be done. Think about who that looks like today. Maybe it's the unpaid volunteer who arrives before dawn to set up chairs for a meeting. The colleague who stays late to organize paperwork so the project can launch on time. The parent who reads one more bedtime story even when they're exhausted. These are modern well-keepers and caravan stewards. Their names might never headline a newsletter, but their steady obedience opens doors and shapes futures. If you find encouragement in stories of hidden faithfulness, press like and consider subscribing to share in more stories like this. Now, have you ever been the servant behind the scenes, doing the work that lets the story keep moving? Maybe you stayed up late planning so everything would be ready in the morning, or you lent a hand at just the right moment. Share one brief line in the comments about what that season taught you. Your experience could become the sign someone else needs to keep going. Mark 5 verses 22 to 24, 35 to 43 leads us into another scene. What if the biggest miracle in a crowded city began with the smallest heartbeat in a quiet room? Picture a man weaving through the throng in a bustling Galilean town, his robes dusty, his face drawn with fear. This is Jairus, a ruler in the synagogue, a man of authority and influence. But right now, his hands tremble because his little daughter lies at the brink between life and death. He presses forward toward Jesus, each step fueled by desperate prayer and fatherly love. We read that he falls at Christ's feet, pleading, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come, lay your hands on her, so that she may be healed, and she will live." Jairus isn't seeking some spectacle or public accolade. He's seeking mercy for his child. Around them, the crowd presses in, a noisy sea of faces all hoping for miracles. Suddenly, a commotion. Someone tugs at Jesus' garment. A woman in the crowd, spent by 12 years of chronic illness and ostracism, has managed to reach him. She reaches out and touches the hem of his cloak. Instantly, Jesus feels power flow out of him. He stops to comfort and heal her. This interruption is raw and human, mixing with Jairus' impatience. Time slips by as Jesus attends to the suffering woman, and Jairus must watch minutes tick away as fear coils tighter in his chest. Meanwhile, in another part of the house, the atmosphere has changed. The hired mourners have already begun their noisy lament. The family has given up hope. They tell Jairus, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" In that hushed room, grief hangs heavy like a curtain. The mother's tears fall silently. The father stands stricken and helpless. When Jesus finally returns to Jairus, he doesn't scold him for the delay. Instead, Jesus reaches out and says, "Do not be afraid, only believe." Then, together with Peter, James, and John, they enter the house. It is completely silent now. The only sound is the sobbing of those who do not yet know that a miracle is coming. Jesus approaches the child's bedside, 12 years old. That number carries the weight of God's promise. The girl lies still on a small cot. Her breath is a whisper, barely there. Her family stands around, frozen in hopeless sorrow. Then the voice of Jesus breaks through the silence. Gently, with heaven's authority, he says, Talitha Kumi, which means, little girl, I say to you, arise. Immediately, the girl's eyes flutter open. Her skin flushes with life. She takes a breath, then another, and sits up. In that instant, laughter replaces weeping. And notice the quietness of this miracle. There is no grand announcement or crowd-surfing drama. There's an intimate word, a gentle touch, and a little girl once silenced now singing again. The child was not merely a proof of power. She was a person reclaimed from the hush of death, restored to all the songs and days she hadn't yet lived. In that household, a fragile life became the center of a miracle. So what does this mean for us today? First, it reminds us that God sees the small places. One single life matters deeply to him. God's compassion is personal. He notices the tender, invisible details that might go unnoticed in a crowd. Second, the story shows us that interruptions can be providence. The woman's touch delayed Jesus, but in that moment, God's compassion touched another life too. God's timing wove together both suffering and salvation. So don't be discouraged by delays. Sometimes God is doing something beautiful in the pause. Third, tenderness is as holy as thunder. That soft voice, those words, little girl, I say to you, arise. They carry heaven's power in a whisper. We might often expect God's power in grand displays, but here it comes in a quiet command and a loving touch. Reflect for a moment. Who in your life needs that same focused, gentle compassion this week? Maybe someone leaning on grief, a young person needing encouragement, or a neighbor who's been forgotten by busy schedules. It could be as simple as a visit, a handwritten note, or a quick call. These small acts of care echo the way Jesus moved, close, personal, and truly caring. If you felt moved by this story, press like to let me know, and consider sharing it with someone who needs hope today. Who in your circle might need to feel seen? Share a first name or a short word in the comments. Just a little nudge that someone should be noticed. Your reply might remind another viewer to reach out. Now, imagine the sound of quiet prayers in a room. Lamps dimmed low, voices soft and expectant. When suddenly a sharp knock sounds at the door. That knock cuts through their worship like a spark. Is this the answer they prayed for? Is it danger? Or is it something else entirely? Acts 12 verses 6 to 16 tells us what happens next. On another night, a group of believers is gathered in prayer. They are worried and whispering because their friend Peter, a leader in the church, has been thrown in prison. An angel quietly woke Peter. He walked past guards, unlocked the iron gates, and escaped. Now, in the early morning, Peter stands knocking at the door of the house where friends are praying. A girl named Rhoda comes to answer. When Rhoda hears Peter's voice outside, her heart leaps with excitement. She recognizes his footsteps. Without thinking, she throws caution aside. Instead of untying the latch and quietly letting Peter in, she runs back into the prayer room and shouts the news. Peter is at the door. Imagine her breathless and stumbling, bursting into that circle of prayer. The apostles look up startled. Rhoda's eyes are wide, her cheeks flushed, and all she can do is gasp. It's Peter. I can see his shadow through the gate. At first, they laugh at her. They think she's out of her mind with joy or maybe even seeing a spirit. After all, they had prayed earnestly for God to save Peter. This answer seems too small to be true. There's disbelief. Their friend just walked out of prison. Surely there's a mistake? Rhoda is not deterred. The joy of hearing Peter's voice overwhelms her common sense. She rushes back to the door instead of finishing her story, too excited to even argue. She flings open the gate, and there stands Peter himself, alive and astonished to see them. The apostles are speechless when they see him, and no wonder. The answer came through a simple knock, a servant girl, and an ordinary house. Rhoda's role in this moment is unforgettable. In a gathering of sober, prayerful believers, it is the voice of a young servant girl that first announces God's mercy. She doesn't have a title or a degree in theology. She just recognizes a voice and lets joy lead. And in so doing, she shows us a beautiful truth. Sometimes the smallest, simplest faith breaks open the biggest moments. Think of it today. Perhaps it's the intern who spots a way to help and boldly speaks up, or the volunteer who sees a need before others do and points it out. These are modern Rhodas. Everyday people who act on faith and run with the good news, even if others might giggle or doubt them. Their simple faith sometimes paves the way for miracles. So here's a quick poll. Have you ever been laughed at or doubted for your faith and yet kept going anyway? If so, press like or even type Rhoda in the comments. No details needed. Just one word to let others know they're not alone in knocking on that door of faith. Look back with me for a moment. We walked to a well with an unnamed servant. We stood in a quiet house where a child's small breath returned, and we raced across stairs with a servant girl whose joy shouted louder than the doubts around her. These three scenes are not random snapshots. They form a simple pattern if we look for it. First, obedience in the quiet. The servant of the well did what needed to be done without title or parade. He prayed, he watched, and he acted when God opened the door. His faithfulness was steady and unseen, the kind of work that keeps everything running, whether it's a family, a project, or even a promise from God. Second, personal compassion. Jairus' daughter reminds us that God's miracles are intimate. Jesus reached into one household and gave back one life. This presses us to remember, sometimes the most sacred work is the quiet rescue of one person, a visit to the lonely, a hand held through the night, a meal brought without fanfare. Small mercy is never small to God. Third, cheerful persistence. Rhoda hears what the others cannot yet accept. Her faith is simple and bright. It's not polished theology. It's the kind of faith that moves feet and bursts into a room with good news. That kind of faith breaks through fear and reminds a doubtful community that God can answer in ways we don't expect. From these patterns come three plain truths you can carry with you. Quiet faith matters. God often builds his work in the soft places, behind the scenes, at the back of the room, or at a humble well. God notices individual lives. No life is too small for his attention. The person we might overlook could be the very one God is turning toward in mercy. Small acts ripple into large outcomes. A single word, a single deed, a single recognition can change the direction of a family, a church, even a nation. If you want to make these truths real, try this simple 7-day practice. Nothing dramatic, just 3 small challenges you can do this week. Do one unseen act of service. Maybe set the table for dinner, sweep a floor, or send an encouraging message to someone feeling unnoticed. Do it without telling anyone later. Let it be between you and God. Offer focused compassion to one person. Choose someone who matters to you and give them your full attention for a short time. No phone, no hurry. Listen to their story, pray with them, or just sit quietly by their side. Speak one small, honest truth when it's risky. Say something kind and true where it counts, maybe at home, at work, or in a small group. It doesn't have to be a sermon, just one brave sentence of love or encouragement. If you try these, notice what happens. Watch how the smallest things can change the tone of a day. Pay attention to how people respond. Keep a short note each evening about what you saw, just one line. Over a week, those tiny notes will become a quiet map of how God can work through small acts. If you like a simple guide to go deeper, I recommend starting with the NKJV Study Bible for clear notes and cross-references. Alongside that, a very practical little book called Prophets and Kings by Ellen G. White gives moving portraits of often overlooked figures in Scripture and how their choices shaped God's people. It's written in a devotional style, easy to read in small portions, and perfect for personal reflection. Conclusion. Now, take a deep breath. Look ahead into your week with fresh eyes. Picture the places where you can be like those hidden figures we met. The world is counting on people like you to do small things with great faith. And as we close, remember this. The Bible isn't only about heroes on center stage. It's about ordinary lives woven into God's great story. The servant at the well, the child restored, the young girl who believed, all whisper the same truth. God delights to use the unseen, the fragile, and the joyful. Thank you for walking through these stories with me. If you found hope or joy here, consider pressing like and subscribing so you can join me next time on this journey of hidden voices. Also, leave a comment if any of these stories touched you. Maybe someone else needs to hear it too. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He open your eyes to treasures hidden in His Word and wonders tucked quietly into your days. May He strengthen your hands for small acts of love, give you courage to believe when others doubt, and grant you joy that no shadow can steal. And may your life, in ways both great and unseen, bear witness to the faithfulness of Jesus Christ. Amen.